hungry because I don't want you to get hangry. But as Elizabeth mentioned, I've been with this Small Business Development Center at Lonestar College for the last year. And what we do there is whatever it is that you need as a business owner, it is our job, our responsibility to provide you with no-cost consultation, whether it be in social media, which of course is huge for business owners right now, which happens to be my expertise, whether you need assistance with attracting more capital to expand or grow your business, or whether you're just starting out and you need assistance with writing your business plan. We do everything under the sun. If we can't figure it out, our job is to reach out and find the people who can figure it out for your business. So please make sure you're using the Small Business Development Center. Unfortunately, I'm sad to report once again that I'm leaving. I'll be on the economic development side, which means I'll be working with larger corporations and hopefully attracting some great businesses to the Houston area and letting them know about the North Houston area specifically and what we can provide in opportunities and talent in this area. So we want to build this up, make sure North Houston, unincorporated Harris County, which technically would be the 5th largest city in the country. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, if it were its own city. We want to make sure that this is the best in America. And so that's what I'll be doing now. Today I'm just going to give you a little bit about my background. I'm a business owner myself, currently own and operate 3 businesses, and I'm going to take you from A to Z on how this all happened. This is a photo here, if everyone can see, of the South Bronx in the 1970s. This is where my father grew up, my father and my uncle. They lived in an abandoned building with no electricity and no running water. The Bronx was a war zone in the 1970s. If anyone remembers the things that were said about it on television, there's a great book, The Bronx is Burning, that discusses the politics. And what's really interesting is a lot of the characters in that book are doing big things today. One of the people specifically mentioned, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani. You can see from their early foundational years how they got to where they are. So definitely check that out if you can. But we'll get right into it. I don't know who's changing my slides. I don't think I have a pointer. Oh, it's right here. All right. I'll change my slides.
Maybe.
Oh, I gotta hit this. There we go.
There you go.
All right. This was actually a video, but I'll walk you through the scene. Has anyone seen this movie, A Bronx Tale? Yes, this is my favorite movie. Not just because I'm from the Bronx, but because there's so many great messages in this movie about father-son relationships, about racial circumstances and things that we need to work on as a country and as people individually. In this particular scene, Colonial is the son's name, and Robert De Niro, I can't remember his actual name in the movie, is talking to his son on a bus that's going over to City Island. City Island is an island that's it's in the Bronx. You go over a little bridge and they serve excellent seafood. This is about 5 minutes from where I grew up. I grew up in Co-op City, which is the world's largest cooperative community. People don't really understand what co-ops are outside of New York City, but basically I lived in a community that had 35 humongous buildings, which were all 26 stories or more. So within this very tight-knit community, there were 300,000 people who lived amongst these 35 buildings and the surrounding area. But Colonial's on this bus, and he's talking to his dad about the Yankees, who just so happen to not be in the playoffs now. But go Astros. I'm an Astros fan. I've converted. And he's telling his dad all the stats about Mickey Mantle and how great he is, and asking his dad whether he could be like Mickey Mantle. And his dad tells him, looks him in the eye. He said, you can be anything that you want to be. Just remember that the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And so that always stuck with me, after I saw this movie. The saddest thing in life is wasted talent. I was always afraid of being that person who didn't live up to his potential. Giving you some history, growing up, I was infatuated with the WWF. So my whole goal in life was to be the Black Hulk Hogan. I mean, I was serious about it. I had a subscription to WWF magazine. You know, I begged my parents to, you know, bring me to Madison Square Garden to see WrestleMania, and I was, you know, this was going to be my profession. You know, if anyone asked me before the age of 8 what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was the Black Hulk Hogan. And so, you know, as time progressed, I ended up being the smallest kid in school. And, you know, I started to realize I got to high school, and I started out high school my freshman year. I was 5'3" and I was 77 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, real thin. And what's funny is I have a 6-year-old son. He's turning 7 now, and he's already close to the size that I was when I started high school. So I got to high school and I realized this Hulk Hogan dream probably wasn't going to happen. And so I had to switch up gears. I thought, you know, I would help save the world by being a virologist and work with viruses and help to create a cure for AIDS and Ebola and those things. And so I was determined to become a virologist. I decided to go to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, study biomedical engineering, and then I was going to go to med school. That was the plan. And freshman year hit me, and I got into freshman chemistry. And I realized I wasn't really good at being a scientist. It was bad. It was the first time I had to go to summer school. And so plans switched once again. I decided to switch my major to economics, not because I knew anything about economics, but because it sounded like I might make some money. And so I completed my degree in economics, and at the end of my tenure at Vanderbilt University, the economy was pretty bad. This was right after 9/11, and it was very difficult to get a job. And so I ended up working with Dell Computer in Nashville, which sounds amazing on a resume, but you know, for anyone who went to Vanderbilt and lived in Nashville, this was kind of like, whoa, you ended up at Dell. And so I was selling computers to small business owners and schools. You know, my schedule was 8 to 5 when I started at Dell. 8 to 5, and I noticed I would come to work and people would disappear. You know, I would look at, I would come in and literally the desk next to me would just be cleared off. And I wouldn't know what happened to the person, and this was almost every day. I would come in and just, people would just be disappearing. And I didn't know what was going on. You know, I was doing pretty well, you know, selling computers over the phone. And one day, my manager tapped me on my shoulder, and she said, "Demetrius, do you like to work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know, pretty cool, you know, can't complain too much. Are you doing all right?" She said, "Well, what are your hours?" I said, 8 to 5. She said, "Okay, well, what time does the building open?" I said, 7 a.m. "What time does it close?"
Oh, no.
8 p.m. She said, "Think about that." And so, you know, I was there for about 5 minutes. I said, "No, I don't understand what she's trying to say." Then it hit me, oh, they want me to work overtime, you know, but they can't mandate it by law. But that was the hint that they were giving me, that they wanted me to work overtime. So I started working what's called bell to bell. That's when the phone lines open at 7 a.m., close at 8 p.m. And I was doing this Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, 13 hours a day. And I started going crazy. I started talking about computers in my sleep. I started talking about them in the shower. And I remember a friend of mine, Ali, started with me, Persian guy. He was a former car salesman. And we were at lunch one day, and he said, "Hey man, you know, are you like imagining computers everywhere you go?" You know, he's like, I just like see computers popping out everywhere. And I realized, yeah, you know, I was hallucinating, like literally hallucinating throughout the day about computers and conversations about hard drives and, you know, all kind of crazy stuff. And so I realized very quickly that I did not want to push buttons for somebody else for the rest of my life. I was being micromanaged. I sold in my first year $12 million worth of equipment. In my second year, $20 million worth of equipment. My third year, $25 million worth of equipment. And I was still being treated like a minion. You know, I came to work one day. There was a huge thunderstorm in Nashville one morning. We get pretty violent storms during tornado season. And my 2 dogs, I had 2 puppies, Domino and Paris. And, I was trying to walk them, and they refused to go outside. They were so afraid of thunder and lightning that I couldn't get them to go outside, but I didn't want to leave home and not walk them because I knew I would have a nice surprise when I got back. And so it took me quite a bit longer to walk them than normal. Ended up getting to work at 8:03 that morning. I was supposed to be there at 8, and I got in at 8:03 and logged into my computer, checked my voicemails. Everything seemed normal. Went to lunch, came back to work, and I had an email. It was at least 3 pages long. I mean, I had to scroll for about 5 minutes just to see the end of the email from my manager, who literally shared a cubicle with me. I mean, we had a glass wall in between us, but she could see me all day, and I could see her, which was pretty annoying. But instead of saying anything to me, she sends me this email, and of course, he CC'd HR on it. And in the email, she mentioned, Demetrius, you were late to work today. This is the 4th quarter. We're trying to reach our target. This is unacceptable. The next time this happens, it could result in anything up to termination. And this is after 3 years. I've sold this company over $50 million. I've sold over $50 million in equipment for this company. And this is how I was treated for being 3 minutes late to work. And so at that moment, I said, you know what? I need to start my own business. And so I was talking to some of my friends from undergrad, some of my fraternity brothers, about ideas on businesses that we might be able to start with very little capital. Despite the fact that I was a great salesperson and I made a lot of money on commission, I was terrible at managing my money, did a lot of stupid things, bought a Lexus, totaled it, bought a BMW. Subsequently after that, my insurance was high, making bad business decisions. I didn't really have a lot of disposable income. And so we're trying to figure out businesses we could start with very little capital. One of my fraternity brothers, he was still an undergrad at Vanderbilt University, and he was in a class that was discussing black masculinity. And in this class, the topic of Phillip Randolph came up. And Phillip Randolph in the early 1900s was trying to integrate the military. The military was still segregated. He started one of the country's first labor unions. He was a thorn in the side to most of the politicians of the day. President Woodrow Wilson in 1919, in his presidential address, called Phillip Randolph the most dangerous Negro in America. Phillip Randolph actually conceived of the idea for the March on Washington. He was supposed to conduct the March on Washington in the 1940s, and World War II broke out. So many people were called up to fight in World War II. The country was distracted. It didn't happen. He did give this idea to Dr. King, who, as we all know, conducted the March on Washington in 1963. In 1963, J. Edgar Hoover had it out for Dr. King, and he wanted to get rid of this guy. So he sent out a field agent, William C. Sullivan, to monitor Dr. King and write up a report that he could use as justification for why we need to get this guy out of here. In William C. Sullivan's report to the FBI, he noted that Dr. King was the most dangerous Negro in America. We see this term come up again when Malcolm X, he went to Africa, he went to Mecca, he returned to the United States, denounced the Nation of Islam, and said that we need to start a voting bloc of people of all colors and all races who are trying to fight white supremacy. And the FBI's file on Malcolm X reflected that he was now the most dangerous Negro in America, and he was shortly thereafter assassinated. Black Panther Party, same thing. FBI file on the Black Panther Party listed them as the most dangerous Negroes in America, was used to justify COINTELPRO, in which their leaders were assassinated and information was disseminated to cause confusion amongst the group and dismantle it. So we kept seeing this trend of this topic, this term, dangerous Negro, come up. And so I said, I wish somehow we could use this information to enlighten people and try to educate people about why we need to defeat some of the racist ideas that are prevalent in our society. And so my partner, Trey, who was taking this class, he was gifted at making clothes. he made all the hats, the t-shirts, the hoodies for the Greeks on campus at Vanderbilt University, at Tennessee State University, which was 5 minutes away, at Fisk University, which was also 5 minutes away, Belmont. Nashville's a great college town, by the way, in case you didn't know. And so I said, Trey, you already know how to make these t-shirts and jackets and hoodies. We're gonna start a clothing line. He said, all right, cool, what are we gonna call it? I said, Dangerous Negro. So, there's no way. There's no way we can start a clothing line called Dangerous Negro. You know, and I called my mom and I told her the same thing. She said, you're out of your mind. I'm not gonna let you do that. You can't do it. You're gonna put yourself in danger. You know, people aren't gonna understand. No one's gonna like it. And I said, no, people are gonna remember. If they hear a clothing line called Dangerous Negro, they're gonna remember it. They're gonna wanna talk about it. And that's what we did. That's what happened. We started a clothing line called Dangerous Negro. And the whole world thought we were insane. And the media immediately reached out to us. And they said, hey, we want to interview you guys. We want to get you on our radio show. We want to run a story in the newspaper. And they would try to dupe us. They assumed that we were just some dumb, radical militants who didn't know anything. And then once we started telling people our story, they were like, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. You know? And things started to take off. Oops. Let me go back. Went the wrong way. Forget that you saw that. So these are my business partners with Dangerous Negro. We all went to Vanderbilt University, except for this guy here, Gary. He was a friend of my partner Sebastian. They went to high school in Africa.
EverSan.
Yeah. I think I got enough. I might be able to get through it before guys, hopefully. Or maybe not. If it gets to 5%, we'll take a break and maybe food will be here or something. But yes, these are my business partners, and everyone gifted in a different area. So, you know, as I mentioned, Sebastian, he served as our president. He grew up in Zimbabwe with my partner Gary, who didn't attend Vanderbilt University, went to Purdue instead. And this is my business partner Trey, who I mentioned to you was gifted at making all the clothes in Nashville for all the Greeks. He ended up going on to Harvard, getting a Harvard MBA. This is my partner Justin, who served as the city attorney of Atlanta for a while. He now runs a nonprofit organization. This is Frank, who is on Wall Street, doing an amazing job on Wall Street. And then, of course, you see me here in my skinnier days. Before I even move on, so this guy Gary, who didn't go to Vanderbilt with us, after we started Dangerous Negro and it started spreading amongst college campuses, we made sure that we always had t-shirts with us in case we ran into a celebrity. And so this would happen often. I snuck backstage actually in Nashville during a homecoming event. This is, you know, even though I had graduated, I still knew a lot of the staff. I knew some of the deans. I got a backstage pass during homecoming. I still lived in Nashville, still working at Dell, and Common was performing and Ludacris was performing. And so I was like, all right, I gotta get these shirts to Common and Ludacris. You know, this gotta happen. You know, so I lingered around backstage way after I was supposed to. I actually made a fake press pass for myself. To stay backstage. It's an ancient Chinese secret. You want to get backstage anywhere, I laminated it and everything, and you know, said press, had a little picture of myself. And so I stayed backstage, and security didn't bother me. And so Common goes on stage, he performs, he comes off stage, and I'm standing right there, like, hey. And he's like, who the hell are you? And I said, well, yeah, you know, your music inspired me. I want you to, you know, this t-shirt was inspired by you. So I gave it to him, you know, he wipes his head with sweat, and I was like, oh, he's never gonna wear this thing. Ended up wearing it on MTV, on TRL, which was a huge look for us. Ludacris gave him a shirt, he never wore it, but got to talk to him about it. Gary ran into a guy in Indianapolis in a club named Rhymefest. Rhymefest was on tour with Kanye West at the time. Rhymefest actually grew up with Kanye West. Rhymefest actually wrote most of Kanye West's first 4 albums. Rhymefest won a Grammy for writing Jesus Walks. before Kanye West. Runs into this guy, we give him a t-shirt, he loves the t-shirts. He said, man, I need a bunch of these for the tour. You know, me and Kanye are gonna wear this for the rest of the tour. And they did, and we developed a friendship. And so as this friendship developed, we realized that Rhymefest was unhappy with his record label situation. You know, he didn't feel he had creative control over his projects. He was looking for a different situation. We had enough money from our t-shirt company. We won a business plan competition sponsored by Miller Coors up in Chicago. They gave us $50K. We were doing pretty well sales-wise. We won, you know, we had enough capital to sign Rhymefest away from his record label and start our own record label with Rhymefest. And so, you know, we put out, sorry, keep touching the wrong thing. Great album. Yes, we put out El Che. He's actually wearing my jacket on this album cover. This was one of our Dangerous Negro jackets. That was my jacket that he loved, and I ended up giving it to him. We put out El Che. He ended up going on to win another Grammy. He also won an Academy Award for a song landing on a soundtrack. And then people were like, really like, who the hell are these guys? You know, Inc. magazine contacted me, Forbes, Black Enterprise, and they were like, who the hell are you kids? You know, you had a t-shirt company, now you got a Grammy Award winning artist. They wanted to know all about us. All of my friends are shy, so I ended up doing all these interviews. And from there, I ended up doing a ton of public speaking. You know, schools and universities reached out to me, and they said, hey, can you come tell your story at our school? You know, we want to inspire our kids to think about entrepreneurship. And so I traveled the country with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who sponsored the Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour. Traveled to 43 different states. Went over to Africa, went to Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, went to London, Rome, just inspiring people to consider entrepreneurship as a path in life, something that I wish I would have considered before I graduated from college, and I was trying to help those college students to let them know there's another way, all right? So, yeah, my words are a little jumbled here, but your network is your net worth. It's something that became serious to me in my business life. Just networking with this guy. We gave him some t-shirts, just, hey, call and check on him. Hey, what's going on? You know, hey, does Kanye need some more shirts? What's going on? And that's how that whole situation happened. So I realized very early on in my career as an entrepreneur that I had to remain motivated, because we have peaks and valleys. You know, we had times where we felt like no one was paying attention to anything that we were doing. And, you know, I was still working in corporate America despite the fact that I wanted to be a full-time entrepreneur. And it was very difficult to stay motivated, to see how I could make this a way of life for myself. And so I was speaking at a school in Indianapolis, a charter school in Indianapolis. And the kids at this school, every day before class started, had to recite the Pledge of Success. And I mean, to hear, you know, when I went to go speak at the school, to hear 200 students say it all in unison, I mean, it literally brought tears to my eyes. And I said, I'm going to incorporate this into my daily regimen. And so I pasted this on my mirror. And so every day before I could do anything else, the first thing that I saw was the Pledge of Success. And I recited this to myself, and I still do, just to motivate me to get my day started. Because that's very important as an entrepreneur. Got to remain constantly motivated. I think it's a little cut off here. Let me see if I can scroll up. Okay, this might be the formatting. But the Pledge of Success, you can Google it, use it to motivate yourself. Something that I firmly believe in as well is the law of attraction. Your thoughts become things, okay? So whenever I'm in a negative mind state, for whatever reason, negative things start to happen. When I'm in a positive mind state, positive things seem to happen. So I won't read this whole quote to you. You can see it here. The reason why I included these two figures, the Notorious B.I.G., Tupac Shakur, is that they talked a lot about premature death in their music. And I don't think it's a coincidence that unfortunately they met untimely demises. You know, and so I always consider that, like I said, your thoughts attract things into your life. And these two, you know, this album's titled Ready to Die. As we know, Tupac talks so much about dying prematurely, and ultimately that's what happens. So, you know, the law of attraction works both ways, okay? So don't talk about things that you don't want to come to pass. All right. So anybody ever heard of DJ Khaled? Heard of this guy? Probably the most obnoxious voice in the music industry. Well, I get DJ Khaled's voice stuck in my head a lot. And you know, he always says, be the best, we the best. And I think about DJ Khaled, and I think back on Dr. King, you know, who says a man should do the job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn can do it no better. So in everything that you do, you gotta be the best at it. You have to, you know, have such a competitive spirit. You're gonna say, no one else is gonna sell more houses than me. You know, no one else is going to clean houses better than I do. Right? You know, if you're a barber, you're gonna say, there's no barbers that can cut hair like me. That's critical. If you're gonna be an entrepreneur, you don't settle for mediocrity. When you settle for mediocrity, you get mediocre results. So I motivate myself. The things that I view, I cut my cable subscription years ago. Hardly ever watch television. But when I do, I try to watch something that's gonna motivate me as an entrepreneur. Of course, A Bronx Tale. If you haven't seen it, please go out and see it. You know, a series of movies. This one right here, The Secret. Has anybody ever seen that? All right, quite a few. It's a little cheesy the first 20 minutes. I mean, it's kind of like an infomercial, and you're like, what's going on here? Watch the whole thing. It will get you motivated. So, see, I told you guys I met Ludacris. This was that meeting. You know, stay inspired. The things that you consume, even through your ears, you have to make sure you're putting positive thoughts into your head. So I had an alarm clock that broke. I think, no, my dog chewed through the cord a little while ago. But this alarm clock was the first one that I had where I could program it to play whatever I wanted whenever I woke up. So the first song I would hear every day was Today Was a Good Day. Before the day even started. Today was a good day. That's what I would wake up to. So I already programmed in my mind I was going to have a good day. And, you know, everyone has their favorite motivational songs. You know, revisit them as often as you need to stay motivated. That's my advice. Now, this is critical to me, feeding your mind constantly. So one of the mistakes that I made, and I think a lot of people make, is believing that you're going to learn everything you need to know in school. That's a serious problem. You know, we dread having to read the books that are prescribed to us on our syllabus. You know, and then once we get out of school, we're like, oh my God, I don't have to write any more reports. I don't have to read anymore. That's a mistake, thinking that you learned everything you need to know in school. This was a hard lesson for me. So now I'm a voracious reader. I go through a book a week, 52 books a year, minimum. And people are like, well, how do you do that? I don't have time to sit down and read. I don't have time either. The secret for me is I use Amazon Audible. Hopefully you have a subscription. Our commutes in Houston make it so instead of wasting your time while you're driving 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, you should be listening to an audiobook, okay? Whatever it is that you're lacking, that you don't know about, you know, in your career, in your business, in your personal life. I've learned so many things just about my emotional responses to things that have helped me as a parent, you know, to help me overcome some, you know, traumatic events that happened in childhood. I've learned so much more as an entrepreneur about things I need to be doing in my business. You don't necessarily need to go out and get an MBA anymore, okay? I went and got an MBA, but you don't necessarily need to do that. The same information you can teach yourself just on your daily commute. If you have a 30-minute commute to work, a 30-minute commute home from work, that's 1 hour a day. You can get through a book a week just doing that. So I use the Audible app, Libby. If anyone's familiar with the Libby app, this is a public library. You can rent audiobooks, ebooks for free through the Harris County Public Library, through the Libby app.
It's
And so in between the book that I get every month with Amazon Audible, the subscription is $16. In between, I use the Libby app to supplement everything else throughout the month. Please take advantage of it, it's critical. Oh, real quick, I'm not sure how we're doing on time. These two guys, this is one of my friends, Bert Gervais. He wrote this book, Who's in Your Top 5? It's all about networking. I was on tour with these guys when I was doing my speaking thing with the Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour. This young guy, Arel Moody, big public speaker. I mean, he literally, he's a millionaire now. He wrote this book, Your Starting Point for Student Success, goes and speaks at colleges and schools all over the country, sells hundreds of books every time he goes to speak at one of these schools. Showed me the way with ClickFunnels. If anybody's familiar with ClickFunnels, he was using this about 6 or 7 years ago as one of the first people to do it, and you know, is extremely wealthy now as a result. You got to get these good books. Oh, I almost passed my book. Yeah. And I'm not trying to say you need to buy this book, but the reason I put this up here is because an accumulation of everything that I learned, just going on my journey, and sometimes I didn't even realize what book I was going to read next. Sometimes I just listened to what was suggested by Audible. I would ask friends what they suggested, and the culmination of all these books was the fact that I knew I needed to write my book. I needed to get my story out. I needed to tell people what led me to, first and foremost, become an entrepreneur. I needed to get some feelings off my chest about things that happened to me in childhood, what I felt was missing, the things that I learned that hopefully other people can use to help and assist and overcome, you know, feelings of neglect, whether it be from a parent or whether it be from other people. I put all of that stuff and bottled it up into a book, and I was able to put that out. I told you I run 3 businesses. This is one of them. I run a book publishing company, and this was the first project that I put out under capitalized B book publishing. And so, and the reason it's called capitalized B, by the way, is because the B in Black people should be capitalized. Just through the rules of English and grammar, when you designate or denote a people, a group of people, should be capitalized. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to accomplish. And so this is my book publishing company. We've got a couple books being published fairly soon. People ask me, what's the secret? This is it. President Calvin Coolidge. I apologize if you can't read the text. President Calvin Coolidge, this is my favorite quote. It says, nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts, as we all know. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. That's it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. It's persistence. You know, there's so many times I could have given up. I could have said, this is too difficult for me to do. We'll never get it done. And guess what? I wouldn't have got a lot of things done. But you have to remain persistent and determined in whatever it is that you're doing. Don't give up. And I had a video here of Will Smith. I don't think it's going to play, but I'll talk you through it a little bit. It's just a quick 30-second clip. And Will Smith, they asked, you know, what is it that separates you from other actors? And he said, you know what? What separates me from everyone else in the entertainment industry is that I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. And they said, what are you talking about? Not afraid to die on a treadmill. He said, if I get on a treadmill and someone gets on a treadmill next to me, I will die before I let that person on the treadmill next to me defeat me. And so you gotta check that clip out when you can on YouTube. But he said that's the only difference between him and other people. You know, he said there are more people who are more attractive than me, there are people who are smarter than me, who have more education than I do, but I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. So think about that when it comes to your business. Are you afraid to die on the treadmill? Are you gonna get off of it before your competitors do? Oh. So yes, I told you I wanted to be the Black Hulk Hogan. It didn't work out for me genetically, right? And I was too afraid to experiment with steroids and things like that. But I had the opportunity to serve as a manager of a professional wrestler. This is one of my fraternity brothers, J5. While we were in undergrad, first of all, he was the same size as me in undergrad, by the way. But he really was serious about becoming a professional wrestler. So he was working out, 6 a.m. He worked out at least twice a day. He was putting chicken in a blender. He was drinking chicken on the way to class. He went from 160 pounds, we're the same size, like I told you. He went from 160 to 260 in 3 years. And ended up trying out for the WWE. He got a contract. And this is J5 today. We're waiting for him to make his big national debut, but he's been behind the scenes. They put him in a couple clips. If anyone still pays attention to WWE, it's not the same as it was in the 80s and the 90s, but he's made his dream come true through persistence. And so, something to consider. You too can be a professional wrestler. Drink chicken. So, the Buddha, I've learned a lot from not only from all religions and all philosophies. But recently I was reading a book called Why Buddhism is True, and it's all about the law of attraction. It's all about attracting the thoughts that you want to manifest in your life. And so Buddha tells you, the mind that perceives the limitation is the limitation. You're your own worst enemy. You're your own superhero. And so one thing I forgot to mention earlier, my dad was one of the very first DJs to ever DJ, period. He grew up in the South Bronx during the time that hip hop was being created. One of his closest friends was DJ Kool Herc, which, if you know anything about hip hop, is considered basically the founder of hip hop. And so I grew up, seeing my dad DJ. He kind of gave up on his dream of being a big time DJ, went into the Navy, and dreams were deferred, but a lot of his friends ended up being very famous DJs. And so I kind of was born into this, and because every kid wants to be like their dad, I wanted to be a DJ. And the problem was I had no rhythm. And so when my dad would try to teach me how to DJ, he would get frustrated very quickly. He didn't have very much patience, and he'd just be like, "Get off it, you're gonna mess up my records, get out of here." And so I never learned. And so I was persistent and determined as an adult to figure this out. And so the first iPad that came out back in 2010, I was so happy, this iPad came out. This was like revolutionary technology. And there was this app called the DJ app, and I started messing around with this thing. And then I started realizing, I think, all right, I'm starting to get the hang of this now. And that turned into a DJ career for me. So this is also something that I do. Yes, I'll be, actually, if you want to hear me DJ, I'll be DJing this evening at Sterling House in Midtown from 6 to 10 p.m. But this is also something that I do as a passion on the side, and it gives me some spending money. But persistence and determination pay off. Okay, it took me probably about 30 years to figure out how to do it. But I do it, I love it, I enjoy it, it's a whole lot of fun. Please live out all your dreams. Remy Martin sponsored me about 3 years ago, and their ad campaign was One Life, Live Them. And what they did, they took 5 different pictures of me and other entrepreneurs who do multiple things. And so, they had consultant, author, entrepreneur, DJ for me. One life, live them. Be persistent, be determined, live out your dreams. And that is all I have for you today.